Good evening. Thank you for coming out this evening. We're excited for the presentation and hearing from Brenda Weaver. I wanted to introduce her. She's inspired by the call of deinstitutionalization, a workforce training grant, and the privilege of escorting many through the trauma and transition from state hospitals to community settings. Mrs. Weaver has traveled more than 50 years in community mental health related services. Initially stepping out on her faith, her work roles and experiences range from direct service interventions, staff supervisor, program development, administration, local and national professional affiliations, a seat at the State Human Service Policy Table, a partner for a federally funded workforce training development grants. There was also a moment as a research associate developing work around technologies to support individuals with schizophrenia, acquire functional skills, and control quality of life and living well. Currently as a faculty retiree with Drexel University, Division of Behavioral Healthcare Education, Brenda develops curriculum and training opportunities that translate the current science and behavioral healthcare trends, share technologies and cautionary tales, facilitate best practices, and promote evidence interventions to widen the scope of possibilities for individuals living with serious mental illness. It has been a privilege to work with peers as partners, colleagues, role models, and friends. Constant reminders of the power of connecting with mutual respect, humility, and advocate for justice. I want to just again thank Brenda Weaver. I don't want to take her time, but I did want to share that we are recording this presentation for training purposes for Bridge of Hope. Thank you.
And thank you. Hello, and thank you for that introduction. And thank each of you for inviting me to share the next hour with you. As I was preparing for this, I was really kind of thinking about neighbors, the neighbors in my life, and the different types of relationships and connections that I've had that help, when I think about it, have helped keep me vertical in the community, knowing that there are people there that I may not, visit on a regular basis, but we have the type of relationship that I know in case of an emergency or any type of situation, there are various people that I go to. It certainly, with these interesting times, creates a sense of security and safety. As neighboring volunteers, as I was thinking about you, your efforts of voluntarily providing relationships and fellowship and tangible supports and resources and opportunities is often the tipping point that'll make the difference between someone who is transitioning from homelessness. And it certainly is a critical component when we think about individuals, those same individuals who may be living with serious mental illnesses, where the need to know that they are welcomed, that people will embrace them for who they are, and they have a sense or a network of care and comfort to be able to get through difficult times, knowing that there are folks who are there that care. But at the same time, extending yourselves like that can be taxing at times and challenging. Being open and comfortable with uncertainty really involves practice and opportunities such as these to kind of sit back and replenish and celebrate what you do well. Think about some things that might kind of be percolating up as we move along, and certainly continue to support the phenomenal work that you're already doing. So with that kind of said, I'm thinking about what is the context of good neighboring, not necessarily being a neighbor, but the actual activities involved in being neighbors. So this evening, I intend to take you on a journey to provide some information, stimulate some thinking, and certainly help widen the lens and support your efforts and understanding for working with individuals who are not only homeless, but who also are living with the challenges of serious mental illnesses. Oops. Okay, this is where, all right. So to be a little bit more specific, my plan for the hour is to really highlight the critical elements that help people stay well and feel secure and safe in their communities. And that's having a sense of belonging, feeling supported, and also being recognized for the unique gifts and talents that people bring with and without a diagnosis. We'll talk about, certainly, coming out of the pandemic, we have realized just how powerful community is and how much we actually need each other to be able to stay vertical. But how do we make those connections, particularly with people who might be a little hesitant or might withdraw a little bit? How will they know who to turn to when you're brand new? And purpose. That folks have the opportunities to join and have fun and share the gifts and fill other gaps that might need to be addressed in our communities. So, kind of as a backdrop and set the stage, I think I've already said that certainly the pandemic has us all trying to right ourselves and figure out how we're going to move forward in this very different world. I call it a post-pandemic hangover with a little brain fog on the side. Our ways of socializing and connecting with each other has certainly changed. And the common ground for all of us, whether we have diagnoses or not, is a heightened, more and more research is telling us that there is a heightened incidence. And I think the number one issue that's bringing people into emergency services, as well as seeking the support of professionals, is related to anxiety and depression. Once again, it also highlights just how devastating or overwhelming it can be when you add the flavor, if you will, of living with a serious mental illness. So I always like to kind of start with, a lot of what we're going to be talking about in these next few moments is about the think of things. But I want to start for a moment and give you a chance to get the feel of things. So at this point, each of you should have a piece of paper, and I'd like you to take the piece of paper and very quickly fold it in half and then fold it in half again. Make sure you kind of crease it really well so you can tear it into 4 pieces. If you have Post-its, you've got 4 Post-its, and if you have index cards, whatever works, but you will need 4 separate sheets of paper as well as a pen or a pencil or some writing instrument. I'll give you a minute to kind of do all of that. I hear paper tearing in the background. Okay. Great. Okay, so hopefully, and you folks who can see each other, you can let me know if everyone has 4 sheets of paper. Yep, still hearing a little tearing. Okay, so as other people are setting up, those of you that have your pencils or pens ready and your 4 sheets of paper, what I'd like you to do on the first sheet is to write the name of someone who's very close to you, that BFF, the person that, what is it, womb to tomb? That's kind of that one that, in spite of everything else, that one is out there. On the second sheet, I'd like you to write down your favorite activity. Something that you enjoy doing that makes your heart sing, that, in spite of everything else, this is the one thing that brings you joy. On the third sheet, I'd like you to write down your favorite place to go or visit. That can be some place that you've actually been to, that that's your heart's desire to one day get there, or some place that you go to frequently. And it doesn't have to be away, any place that gives you a sense of warmth, comfort, and joy. It would be that place. Now, on the final sheet, on your fourth sheet, I want you to think of that one private secret, something that you hold very dearly that no one else or maybe one other person, that BFF, may know about. And with this one, we're not going to share this or anything, but with this one, you can choose whether or not you'd like to write it down or just think about that secret that you hold so dearly. Okay. All righty. And now I'm going to wave my magical wand. And at this point, you are going to experience a feeling of being bombarded from forces that you can't see. There's noise and confusion going on in your head, and you're having a hard time trying to understand what's going on. You're at a place where you're starting to question whether or not you can trust yourself and test your senses. Your mind is playing tricks on you, and your family and friends, you get this feeling that maybe they're conspiring against you. With that, I'd like you to take paper number 1 and rip it up, because the reality has become elusive, and this person does not share your experience. Simply said, they tell you that you're no disrespect intended, but that you're talking crazy. And it seems like more and more this person is becoming uncomfortable being with you. Now, I'd like you to take page number 2 and rip it up, because you're suspicious, you're anxious, you've lost interest in your favorite activities. You're having a hard time just waking up and taking the covers off of you in the morning. In fact, no activity anymore is enjoyable. You just kind of want to sit. Now, rip up paper number 3, because your favorite place is no longer a welcoming place. Because the last time you were there, you exhibited some bizarre behavior. You were perceived to be threatening. In fact, the situation was so bad they had to actually call the police. And you can remember that was the place where they put you away or hospitalized you for at least 48 hours to do an evaluation. Now, all you have left is that secret, that one thing that may make you feel ashamed. You keep it so tightly bottled up, and you blame yourself, or you feel helpless and you feel hopeless. Although this is a crude exercise, it gives you an opportunity to just for a moment experience what it's like to be someone who is diagnosed and living with a serious mental illness. Okay, so, oops. So when this occurs, we're getting much, much better, and we're getting more public announcements and links and connections if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling anxious. And when I say serious mental illness, I'm talking about not only those feelings, but there's also some cognitive activity, some genetic predisposition that is getting in the way of a person's ability to manage stress in ways that don't get in the way of their ability to get up in the morning, to go to work, to engage with a loved one, to worship, to do any of the things that often those of us who are not living with these experiences tend to take for granted. I always tell people that in spite of everything else, we still haven't really embraced the reality that mental illness is an illness. It is a disease. It can be treated, and folks can do and will recover. But a lot of our attitude and the internalized and external stigma that goes with it still is rampant. One of the ways that has become our go-to to help people explain and make sense of the experience is this model. It's called the stress vulnerability model. And it highlights the reality that 1 in 10, I think not 1 in 4 individuals will be someone who may have an experience with a mental illness or the symptoms of a mental illness. All of us are born with the predisposition for experiencing a mental illness. But what we have around us, our supports, our connections, our relationships, and our own makeup certainly will either get in the way of or help to support and get us through difficult situations so that they don't interfere with our ability to function and do what we need to do and fulfill roles and feel happy and have fun and all that good stuff. Certainly, it speaks to childhood trauma and the response to that, but that's the base. We are experiencing, certainly after these last 3 years, all of us have become familiar with the trauma of being faced with the unknown, some external force over which we have no control. If you think about it, again, who's that go-to? Where's that safe place? What, takes your mind off of things and helps you relax certainly makes a difference. Those resources, the ability to manage stress is certainly critical. Those folks who choose a quick fix may certainly begin to use substances, alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, whatever, you name it, just to try to find that place of calm and that equilibrium. However, if their experiences have been such that the predisposition is there, and the trauma has been such that it's not resolved, and the anxiety level and the distress is over the top, certainly we know that the vulnerability, if you will, for a mental disorder begins to peak. Briefly, this just tells us that the idea that people become ill when stress they face becomes more than they can cope with. And the circumstances, the supports, and the resources, both internally and externally, are such that they're not enough to keep people from tipping over the edge. And the likelihood of a psychotic episode is increased. So this is one of the ways that has become helpful for folks to be able to wrap their head around, okay, I know I'm vulnerable and I know I have to do something to manage stressful and difficult situations. Okay. The lived experience, if you will, if you take the feeling that you had from that little walk through mental ill health that we just experienced, over time, and with increasing episodes of distress, these are some of what I call the apprehensions and altered states, the things that get in the way and certainly interfere with a person's ability to do the things that they want to do in life. Certainly the fear and shame I talked about. Still, people don't bring casseroles when someone's diagnosed with a mental illness. When we know someone may have been hospitalized for a psychiatric disorder, do we visit, do we send cards, or do we even ask people when they return back to the community? That certainly adds to some of the distress of living with the illness. One of my personal favorites is what I call the I'm fine ailment, and it is part of the symptom cluster that goes with serious mental illness. It's freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. I'm fine, but sometimes folks need to believe that they're fine in order to be able to stand up and put one foot in front of the other, because the experience sometimes can be so overwhelming. Being an illness that is a brain-based illness, it does impact on people's ability to think, to reason, how they perceive and respond to the environment, what's going on and busy in their heads. And the brain and the body will do whatever it needs to do to make itself safe and comfortable. That's the upside. The downside is that the brain can't turn itself off. So when it's ready to protect, that level of angst only exacerbates and makes the situation more difficult. The rest of these feeling flawed, feeling less than adequate. If you think about how people in general receive information about mental illness, they're not always the most engaging or positive depictions of people. So if I'm someone who's been diagnosed with an illness, all of those images now become internalized and become part of who I am. The distress, the distrust, the hopelessness, what has been, we know the history of what life has been like with individuals with serious mental illnesses. For diverse individuals, it's mental illness plus the impact that they've had socially and cross-culturally that has either enhanced or gets in the way of creating an identity that is acceptable both to themselves and others. And then there's always the practical things that get in the way. How do you get to and from places? How do you get, certainly you folks who are, I call them the keepers of many resources and the connectors of the tools and the people, places, and things that will help people thrive in the community. You know what some of these logistical obstacles can take place. In terms of, again, it's also a behavioral, once again, we will do whatever we need to do in order to keep ourselves comfortable and right. The body is a phenomenal organism that can kind of take care of itself, but sometimes those behavioral responses from outside looking in can appear to be very bizarre, can appear to be very threatening. A case in point, you walk into the grocery store and you see someone in the aisles that has tin foil on their head in order to keep the rays away. Those are not people you're necessarily looking to approach. Those are folks that you're kind of grabbing the kids and heading for the door. But again, I guess my take home is that when we see these bizarre behaviors that we can't really explain, that don't fit into the norm of things, I always ask myself, what is going on in this world, in this person's world, that's causing this to happen? And you can see it's a number of factors that get in the way. It can be so overwhelming that just something as simple as getting up and brushing your teeth. And I ask you for a moment to just think about all of the things that you did this morning, from the moment you woke up until you got to your front door or your first appointment or your first destination. Just take a moment to run the list. The alarm goes off or you wake up automatically. You get out of bed, you do a stretch, and I'll let you kind of run your list for a minute. And then I ask you, are you at the front door yet? Most of you will say, yeah, I'm almost there, but there's a couple more things that I got to do and remember. And as we're getting younger, that list becomes even more complicated. Now imagine, from the stories that you've heard from people that you know, and maybe from your own experiences, what happens when the symptoms of illness begin to percolate? That something as simple as just getting up and remembering to shower and brush your teeth becomes a challenge. And again, being a cognitive behavioral disorder, so it also impacts that how do we perceive, process, and respond to connections, what happens in terms of communication, the likelihood of people being misunderstood or their thoughts and language becoming garbled begins to increase. So I call it a 360 opportunistic experience for folks. What drives it, and you can see it's both a challenge and a celebration, and it's all about connections. We are social beings. We thrive on being with and around and connected to folks. We want to, even with neighbors. I think there was a national study done not too long ago where they canvassed communities, I think over 5 like between 500 and 800 people. And all of them said that they wanted to be neighbors, they wanted to connect. And then it was the yes, but, folks could find, and for folks that are living with mental illnesses and just in general, the social anxieties, the how they perceive themselves and what they perceive other folks will think, all of those experiences that we talked about just a few minutes ago come right up to the surface, and they create a distance between folks. We don't think of, I know in terms of professional practitioners, we don't even think about people with mental illnesses having fun. Duh. I always ask the question, where do people go for vacation? And it used to be the response, they went to the hospital. Really? That's not about that next point, recovery and coping. We know that it's part of the human condition to overcome any adversity, and we will do whatever is necessary to right ourselves. With individuals living with serious mental illnesses, that has been held out and away from them for such a long time. We misunderstood the nature and scope of the illness, and we're beginning to learn, and certainly in the last 20 years, thank you, we've been able to manage, and we've listened to people who live with the experience to help guide us. How do they stay vertical? How do they keep from going under? And they tell us it's about connecting to others, particularly connecting to individuals who share the same experience, the peers. They become role models, having opportunities, but also having the flexibility and the structure to be able to accommodate difficult moments and periods of distress. And I always say, we need to be able to get up and move it. And, kind of have a way to connect to people that can do some reality testing and help kind of keep people grounded during difficult times. But once again, it comes with both a blessing and a curse. So with that said, when I think about the work that you're doing in the communities and the concept of neighboring, I think about radical hospitality. For case management, I call it, intentional outreach. But here we're talking about radical hospitality, bringing the warmth, the comfort, the care, the safety. I call it kind of a front porch mentality, where you can have a safe distance, but you're still making a connection, and people feel comfortable enough to be able to share and be who they are in spite of all of the chaos and confusion. A place where people can be accepted for who they are and understood for what they're experiencing. So, very briefly, instead of me going on, I call these the universal helping tools. If nothing else, if you can grasp and hone and capitalize on these 5 areas, you've pretty much got 85 to 70% of how to connect to someone with a serious mental illness. You've got that in your toolkit. So let's take a moment and see just what these things entail.
There are many aspects of helping skills. Key components of helping skills include attending, reflecting, listening, encouraging, and questioning. Attending refers to how you orient yourself to a student or client. The letters SOLAR represent key aspects of effective attending skills. S, face the client or student squarely. O, adopt an open posture. L, lean toward the student or client. E, maintain good eye contact. R, try to be relatively relaxed. Reflecting refers to summarizing and paraphrasing content or emotion by restating or rephrasing the main point of what a student or client has said. Listening involves paying attention to the content and feeling of what a student or client has conveyed through spoken words as well as through nonverbal cues. hearing is not the same as listening. Encouraging refers to small actions like nodding and smiling. These small actions, often called minimal encouragers, remind the student or client that you are listening, and it reminds them that you are interested in what they have to say. These small actions encourage the student or client to keep talking. Questioning refers to using both open-ended questions and closed-ended questions as tools for gathering information from students and clients to build relationships with them. These and additional tools help build a helping relationship.
Okay. Okay, so those, like as I said earlier, those are the foundation. This is kind of when and how we enter. And as you can see before you, it gets translated into when and how we communicate. And I'm notorious for creating acronyms so that folks can kind of grasp concepts rather quickly. And here for communication, particularly if someone is really experiencing quite a few symptoms and they're having a really difficult time focusing, our ability to pace our communication becomes critical. Being able to feel safe enough in spite of some of the confusion to work through the confusion, if you will, to be able to connect and move forward. So it takes patience. If we're engaging in helping people develop some skills, one of the things that is living with serious mental illness impacts is social ability, interpersonal effectiveness, the ability to be able to connect and join with people. So it takes time to be able to build the comfort and the safety with self and with others to move forward. I've talked a little bit more about the acceptance, that folks realize that you see who they are in spite of what is going on in their lives. People used to believe that there was a ticker tape that would go across their head that flashed that said, I'm a mentally ill person, I'm a mentally ill person. And, so there's almost that inherent hesitation and a sense of stepping back because they're really not sure if you're going to be able to accept and connect with them. The way we work around that is with a sense of, I call it respectful curiosity, that we're able to not only connect, but we also demonstrate a willingness to understand the other person's world. It's like, this may be a difficult time for you. And I'm segueing into empathy, but I'm here for you. And you know what? There's so much noise and confusion going on with you. How about if I just kind of we sit here quietly? And if you think about the front porch mentality, that's a great place to have a cup of tea and just muse the universe. It's also important, particularly important, to pay attention to what's not said. Many a truth is shared in behavior. And again, because there's sometimes a disconnect between what people are saying and what we're seeing, we really have to pay attention to what's congruent with what's going on with a person and what might be a little off. Also, we know that often people express distress behaviorally. So the gestures and the mannerisms and when and how these things begin to occur give us a clue that there might be something going on, and we might have to pace ourselves, or we might have to ask, maybe this is too much. Do we need to stop? Do we need to slow down? You tell me, because I'm getting the feeling that this might be a bit too much. So these are just a few things and I also caution that we don't use these as stereotypes, but that these are the things that we pay attention to, and we see how it demonstrates itself with each unique individual. More than anything else, people may forget what you do and what you say, but they never forget how you make them feel. And it takes time to build trust. It's and if you think about in your own lives, what does it take for you to trust an individual so much that you're willing to, let's go back to our opening example, to call your BFF, that you would be able to you would feel very comfortable walking to their front door and knocking and saying, I'm having a really difficult time, can you help me? And in response, the way you kind of signal that, that you're there to trust is the being trauma informed. And at this point in our lives, I think everyone needs to be aware of the possibility that we have all been traumatized and we're a little sensitive. And in some cases, some of us might be a little raw. So how do we reach out in ways that are welcoming, appropriate, and comfortable? And that's respectful and resourceful. And you folks probably know better than I how to translate the resourceful piece. That there's unconditional understanding, that I will put a pin in judgment, and I will be open to different, to unique, and not vilify or label or disregard. This may be at this point in time what works, what has gotten people vertical to this point, and something that maybe if we provide them more opportunities, if we see them as strong and capable and able, there may be other opportunities for them to be able to stretch and thrive and grow. And if nothing else, that there's a sense of being trustworthy. And, once again, this is one of those things where you probably know better than I. Just like you have to be patient, you also have to be tenacious. But once again, knowing who people are and taking the time to understand their context tells us when and how often we can connect. When I was working in the community, in the streets, with people with mental illness, it would take me months to get somebody off of the steam grates and into a safe shelter or a home. So it's like, but I also had to figure out just how often I could come back and just remind you, may not want to talk to me today, but here's my card just in case. Okay. And really understand that sometimes when people say no, it may be no for the moment, but it's not no, absolutely not, never again in life. So when I hear no, that's that tenacious piece. I want to think about, what has happened to this person before? Is this an experience that they've been through and not been successful? So they're a little raw and a little hesitant. What needs to be different? How can I at least have the conversation that'll help me answer some of these questions? But really widen the scope and just think of no for the moment, but no, not a finality, if you will. And these are some of the things that I say, be proactive, in areas where you think somebody might be hesitant or very quick to withdraw. Maybe step back. And if nothing else, we do have the power of our ability to engage in conversations. So, and being, once again, trauma informed, it's not what's wrong with you, but what's happening? How can I be of help? Is there anything that we can do right now to make you feel more comfortable? Help me understand what's going on. You're sitting there and someone is talking about how the pattern on the wall is beginning to change and can't you see it? Can't you see it? Well, my response is no, I can't see it, but I believe you see it. So help me understand. And that's, I just kind of gave you an example of how we amplify empathy. And these are all of the things that we use to be able to connect and calm and communicate and grow and thrive together. There's a couple of things. There's been some research that's been done on empathy with helping professions. And they say 4 elements kind of fall into the pattern. First, perspective taking, that I can I call it putting myself into the skin of the individual to be able to listen and be still long enough to let the person teach me who they are and help me understand that in that conversation, we put a pin in our judgment because we love to judge. Like, child, let me tell you, we want to label behavior, we want to explain it, we want to kind of pigeonhole it. And we said, no, be still. Be still. Let the person be your guide. Let them tell you. They are the expert in who they are. Recognize the emotional tone that's embedded in the conversation, in the interaction, and then being able to, relay that back that says, I understand, I'm here with you. And like I said, sometimes it's just one of those, I hear what you're saying. I don't know how to respond, but at least I can be here with you. Okay. So with this, that's the foundation. That's kind of, the who and the fundamentals of what's involved. And now how do we take that? And you can see I'm making neighboring a skill set, some action where there's, we need to have some information and we need to have some behaviors and activities to be able to forward it so that folks can manage the additional angst that comes with trying to dig out from under, to transition from being homeless to being a part of a community. Once again, think about your experience, whether it was 5 years ago, 25, 50 years ago, being new in a community and what that feels like. And then once again, think about the experience that you had when we started, coupled with what people have shared with you about the symptoms and the impact of serious mental illness. That assertive outreach and voracious hospitality is so vital. But one of the charges whenever we're helping or in helping positions, whether they be paid positions or voluntary positions, and once again, I celebrate your willingness to share of your time, particularly for folks, you are going to be the tipping point for success and the ability of people to thrive in your communities. And it starts with, we call it healer, know thyself, volunteer, know thyself, if you will. These are some questions that in the quiet, you really want to think about and really kind of put into focus. Because as I said earlier, this work is challenging. It is phenomenal. As you can see, I've been doing it for a couple of years. And, I still have the passion. I still have the excitement because I'm constantly remembering what I bring and who people are and the phenomenal stories and experiences they're sharing with me. That helps me grow. That helps me thrive and, keeps me putting one foot in front of the other. So these are some things. How do you feel about working with people in general who have been homeless? And then more specifically, people who have been homeless with mental health conditions. How comfortable are you walking side by side to kind of relinquishing the control and the reins and be vulnerable enough to be able to sit with and connect with very strange and interesting places? Do you have that front porch state of mind? And more importantly, what do you do to keep yourself strong, to keep yourself in a place where you can continue to do the phenomenal work that you do? And I'll ask you, just kind of think about it. What have you done within the last 24 hours to take care of yourself and make you feel good and comfortable and safe and warm and fuzzy? Just kind of think about it. And if you don't have anything to do, you need to get to getting. And, certainly the fact that you're volunteering says that you are definitely committed and willing to go that extra yard to be there for someone in distress. In communicating, you saw a couple of times the need to be very specific about how and what we're asking for. It helps kind of break through some of the clutter and confusion that people experience. So these are some questions that you see on this side. It helps us understand what the person has strong, what's strong with the person. And again, I can't overstate the ability and the power to tap those internal resources and what happens when we connect our resources with other people's resources. Great things can happen. But these are some guidelines, and I call them your cheat sheets, so feel free to cut them out and stick them on your backpack or whatever. But these are ways that you can really focus your inquiries and get more specific information about who people are and what works best for them. Also, you want to be able to discover what has yet to be discovered or what has been atrophied, because folks have been so busy trying to figure out how to take care of themselves. So what are the possibilities, and how do we take that first step? How do they kind of make sense of the world, and how can we help them do some reality testing and checking when things are not quite? And certainly, I think the fact that you're the bridge of hope, all of this is encompassed under that concept of hope. We've actually made you make hope a reality for many, many people. Even when, and again, if we stay on a positive note and we're strength-based and we're really looking at the person in spite of whatever clutter and package they bring with them, that becomes an opportunity to be able to kind of see even more possibilities. We may not agree, and that's the beauty of being able to disagree but not be disagreeable, to be able to see other possibilities and then kind of come to some type of mutual agreement. And sometimes it's like, we're going to see this situation differently, but guess what? We can still work together and move beyond it. And, giving up the sense, particularly for people who have had experiences with the mental health system, that sense of doing it all by yourself independently. And I forgot what that other piece was. Maybe it'll come back to me, but definitely, helping people remember that we get along with, it takes a village to support us, and we get along with a lot of help from our neighbors and friends and significant others. Okay. And these are just kind of some tips, tools to support how we can work it out. But 9 times out of 10, we can work it out better together than we can kind of battling against and getting into power struggles with each other. I also have to, as much as we want to do the work and we come to it with open hearts and open hands, we also have to be cognizant of the fact that we are dealing with folks whose brains, whose perceptions, whose behaviors may create some difficult situations. So I always tell people to never forget and be alert. Don't let it become a barrier. It just heightens your alert, your awareness and attentiveness to what's going on. These are some things that they're simple, they're common sense, but they're so impactful, particularly with someone who's highly distressed. Kind of meeting people on the same level. When I used to do outreach work in the community and I would meet people under the bridge in their box, I would always kind of, dress the part, but also make sure that if they were laying on the ground that I squatted down. I used to bring a milk crate with me and I would have it there. So at least I would never put myself in a position that's more than, because at that point it's a perceptual response that, here's this person who's standing over me. And if there's a whole bunch of stuff going on and the environment is noisy and confusing, you're really creating angst and creating difficult situations. So we want spaces that are open, that are comfortable, that are not too cluttered with a whole bunch of noise, that we present, that we calm and relaxed and focused. So as an aside to this, I also tell folks to, pay attention, be present, get yourself in a place where if I know I'm going into a situation where people are struggling with their mental well-being, I want to make sure that I don't bring my chaos and confusion. So I learn how to get to my quiet, comfortable place and then enter. Okay. if we're continuing to really advance the reality that all of us have been traumatized at some point, whether we know it or not, whether we're, it's getting in the way of our functioning or not, these are the safety checkpoints, because we usually only think of safety as the physical piece. But there's also four other components: the psychological, the ability to be safe with oneself. And if you think about it, when folks are really bombarded by the symptoms of their illness, that they don't even feel safe with themselves. I used to have folks that would come to the emergency room and say, please just restrain me, give me some weight, make me feel comfortable and safe. There's social safety, being safe with other people. It's like, I don't know you, and I'm not sure that I don't know that you're someone that I'm going to be safe and comfortable with. There's the moral piece. That's a difficult sphere to explain, but it's a search for understanding. And where do we how do we make sense of what's going on and not fall into the well of, degradation or self-effacing? And the other, oops, sorry about that. And here we go. Come on, there we go. And the other element that we've become acutely aware of is cultural safety, that the overall experience for me to be able to live, promote, honor, and explore my heritage and be proud of it, and not feel that it's something that I have to hide or switch or code. And, again, as we continue to move on and we become more and more diverse, how do we get to the place where people can be who they are authentically and be accepted for who they are is critical. Okay. Some other things of being alert, I always tell people, if your gut is telling you, or if your spidey senses or your safety senses are saying that this is a situation and what's happening here is not comfortable, pay attention to that. Don't let your brain talk you out of or into a situation that may not be comfortable. And once again, these are things to kind of always be alert, but don't allow these things to get in the way of your ability to connect and be there for a person. An individual. Okay. Let's see. And in spite of all that's going on, there are ways, if you think about that PACE communication slide, those are ways that you can, a being that helps you talk past the disordered thinking, that if you're focused, if you can remember that there's a person that's experiencing, and that's what you want to connect to, not the illness, you want to connect to the person. You heard me say you don't enter a delusion, you don't enter a hallucination, but you don't discount that those are experiences that people are having. And sometimes they just need to hear, no, I don't hear that. I don't see that. I don't feel that, but I believe that you do. And what I need you to do is help me figure out what's going to make you feel comfortable in spite of all of that. And if we've taken the time to build the relationship and make the connection, that will happen. Okay. And all of us on any given day can kind of talk ourselves in and out of a situation. It's like the alarm clock didn't go off. I wake up late. My hair's all over my head. I'm a terrible person. And I haven't even gotten out the door. And already I've beaten myself up. So for all of us, this is one of those universal things. I'm just stupid. Or, those things over time are cumulative and they really go to the soul and spirit of who we are. So we need to learn how to catch it, how to check it, just stick to the facts. The alarm clock didn't go off, and that is not my fault. Okay. And even if it is my fault, it's not going to change the fact that I'm late. So let's move on. At least I got up, at least I'm walking out the door. And certainly any opportunity that we can, we want to reframe it turn it into a positive if we can, celebrate the effort and move past it. Okay. We're not perfect beings. We're going to make mistakes, and we have to learn how to be okay with it. So as we bring this full circle, I want to put it all into a nice package of what I call the 14 cares, a little something for yourself and things that'll help us be with others. Always, I wake up in the morning and I look in the mirror, and you don't want to know what I look like in the mirror in the morning, but I'm like, good morning, beautiful. Thank you. I woke up this morning. I know my name, and we're off to a good start. Creating spaces. Where can you go for safety? Again, all of these are very, straight ahead, and that becomes your checklist for wellness. Above and beyond everything, I'm just about there. If nothing else, all of the stuff that goes on, take a breath and don't take it personally. Okay. Accept and evaluate. And so here we are, Wendy, a couple minutes over, but we're where we need to be. I can't.
Talita, are you on? We're going to see, Brenda, if anyone in our audience has any questions for you in the last couple minutes here.
Does anybody have a question, or maybe something that they took away from Brenda's presentation today, or anything you'd like to share with us?
This one is always hard. It's like, that's a lot of information to absorb in an hour, and folks are like, so I understand.
I was taking pictures of the stuff that you have up on the screen, and I missed the last part of the 14 different cares. And I was wondering if, oh yes, can I take that picture?
You got it.
You are absolutely amazing. I want to be like you.
Ooh.
We have all these slides available as well in electronic format that we will send to you all afterwards, so you'll have the content.
Yeah. And there's also, Wendy, a packet of, there are a couple of slides that have some elaboration in a packet. So
Yes, that they received tonight, that they have already.
Oh, great. Okay, great.
Transcript. Well, we've also recorded it, and so we'll have video. You'll be able to listen to the recording again as well. Yeah.
Okay. This is a moment where I'm actually happy about technology.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions or scenarios, even things you've experienced where you'd love Brenda to speak into that for you?
Sometimes, this is really with Bridge of Hope, but in my job as a college teacher, sometimes it's becoming more difficult to know when you're helping somebody if you're in a safe situation or not. And it's in body language and things. Have you heard any updated information or like a check sheet to go through to help a person make those decisions? I count on God and prayer,
Always.
a lot, but sometimes I've gone from doing something for many years to feeling like I hardly know what I'm doing anymore, or it's a whole new dynamic, especially since COVID.
Yes. Yeah. Well, to start off answering your question, there's not a whole lot new in terms of how we interact and connect with folks. I think it's more being more vigilant about, and you said it, this is a whole new world. We're all kind of struggling and trying to figure out how to come out from under. And folks are looking for any number of ways to feel that sense of safety and comfort and warmth and care and all of those things that I guess prior to COVID, we may have tended to take for granted. I'm one of those people like you who believes that there's always a higher power that's kind of the master of the universe, and nothing just happens, offhand. So, if certainly feel free to take some of the information that's on the slides, but just be aware of and pay attention to the who, the when, and the where. And I always say, if your spidey senses, or if you walk in and something doesn't feel right, pay attention to that. If you're in a situation like in a classroom, if you're still in a classroom, check the environment. Is it too noisy? Is there too much information? Do we just need to stop and be still for a minute? I love the concept of having to take a nap, because when you got a bunch of people running around and, just getting all hyper and everything, let's just sit and be still for a second. So, like I said, there's not a whole lot new. It's just capitalizing and reframing and thinking about how we can do it better so that more of us feel safe and comfortable and welcomed and warm. I hope that helps.
Anyone else? One more question?
This is just a comment. I just really appreciated the information you gave about no, maybe not to give up, but to turn it around and just keep trying.
Great, thank you. That was one of my favorite ahas. Because someone actually said to me, no, and I walked away. And when I came back, they saw me with someone else and they said, how come you didn't come back and talk to me? I was like, oh, I didn't think I was supposed to. You said no. I said, well, today I could say yes. I was like, lesson learned. Thank you.
Any last questions or thoughts? All right. Thank you, Brenda. This has been fantastic. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you to all the volunteers that have chosen to be with us tonight. We will be sharing your video and the other resources that you sent with those that couldn't attend tonight, as well as those that were here. So again, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. And you know where to find me.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Thanks so much. Take
You're
care, be
welcome.
safe, be well, and continue to do the phenomenal work that you're doing. So appreciated.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, well, I don't know about you, but I imagine I have my backpack on and I have so many tools, and like Wendy shared, we are going to be sending that out.